But then he heard what Laban's sons were saying. Yaakov has taken away everything that our father once had. It's from what used to belong to our father that he has gotten so rich. He also saw that Laban regarded himself differently than before. Adonai said to Yaakov, "Return to the land of your ancestors, to your kinsmen. I will be with you." So Yaakov sent for Rachel and Leah and had them come to the field where his flock was. He said to them, "I see by the way your father looks that he feels differently toward me than before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, and that your father has belittled me and has changed my wages 10 times. But God did not allow him to do with me any damage. If he said, 'The speckled will be your wages,' then all the animals gave birth to speckled young. And if he said, 'The streaked will be your wages,' then all the animals gave birth to streaked young. This is how God has taken away your father's animals and given them to me. Once, when the animals were mating, I had a dream. I looked up. There in front of me, the male goats, which mated with the females, were streaked, speckled, and mottled. Then, in the dream, the angel of God said to me, 'Yaakov.' And I replied, 'Here I am.' He continued, 'Raise your eyes now and look. All the male goats mating with the females are streaked, speckled, and mottled. For I have seen everything Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Beth El, where you anointed a standing stone with oil, where you vowed your vow to me. Now get up, get out of this land, and return to the land where you were born.' Rachel and Leah answered him, 'We no longer have our inheritance from our father's possessions, and he considers us foreigners, since he has sold us. Moreover, he has consumed everything he received in exchange for us. Nevertheless, the wealth which God has taken away from our father has become ours and our children's anyway. So whatever God has told you to do, do.' Then Yaakov got up, put his sons and his wives on the camels, and carried off all that livestock, along with all the riches he had accumulated, the livestock in his possessions, which he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to Yitzhak his father in the land of Canaan. Now Laban had gone to shear the sheep, so Rachel stole the household idols that belonged to her father, and Yaakov outwitted Laban and army by not telling him of his intended flight. So he fled with everything he had. He departed, crossed the Euphrates River, and set out for the hill country of Gilead. Not until the third day was Laban told that Yaakov had fled. Laban told his kinsmen with him and spent the next 7 days pursuing Yaakov, overtaking him on the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream that night and said to him, 'Be careful that you do not say anything to Yaakov, either good or bad.' When Laban caught up with Yaakov, Yaakov had set up camp in the hill country. So Laban and his kinsmen set up camp in the hill country of Gilead. Laban said to Yaakov, 'What do you mean by deceiving me and carrying off my daughters, as if they were your captives taken in war? Why did you flee in secret and deceive me and not tell me? I would have sent you off with joy, singing to the music of tambourines and lyres. You didn't even let me kiss my sons and daughters goodbye. What a stupid thing to do. I have it in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night and said, "Be careful that you don't say anything to Yaakov, either good or bad." Granted that I had to leave because you longed so deeply for your father's house, but why did you steal my gods?" Yaakov answered Laban, "Because I was afraid, I said, 'Suppose you take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find your gods with someone, that person will not remain alive.' So with all kinsmen to witness, if you spot anything that which belongs to you, take it back." Yaakov did not know that Rachel had stolen them. Laban went into Yaakov's tent, then into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the two slave girls, but he did not find them. He left Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household gods, put them in the saddle of the camel, and was sitting on them. Laban felt around the tent, but did not find them. She said to her father, "Please don't be angry that I am not getting up in your presence, but it's the time of my period." So he searched, but didn't find any of the household gods. Then Yaakov became angry and started arguing with Laban. "What have I done wrong?" he demanded. "What is my offense that you have come after me in hot pursuit? You have felt around in all my stuff, but what have you found of all your household goods? Put it here in front of my kinsmen and yours, so that they can render judgment between the two of us. I have been with you for these 20 years. Your female sheep and goats haven't aborted their young, and I haven't eaten the male animals in your flocks. If one of the flocks of yours destroyed by a wild animal, I didn't bring the carcasses to you, but bore the loss myself. You demanded that I compensate you for any animal stolen, whether by day or by night. Here's how it was for me. During the day, thirst consumed me, and at night the cold, my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the God whom Yitzhak fears, had not been on my side, by now you would have certainly have already sent me away with nothing. God has seen how distressed I've been and how hard I've worked, and last night he passed judgment in my favor." Laban answered Yaakov, "The daughters are mine, the children are mine, and the flocks are mine, and everything you see is mine. But what can I do today about these daughters of mine or the children they have borne? So now, come, let us make a covenant, I and you, and let it stand as a testimony between me and you." Yaakov took a stone and set it upright as a standing stone. Then Yaakov said to his kinsmen, "Gather some stones." And they took stones, made a pile of them, and ate there by the pile of stones. Laban called it Yagar Shahutia, pile of witness in Aramaic, while Yaakov called it Giled, pile of witness in Hebrew. Laban said, "This pile is a witness between me and you today. This is why it is called Gilead, and also Ha-Matzpah, the watchtower, because he said, 'May Adonai watch between me and you when we are apart from each other. If you cause pain to my daughters, or if you take wives in addition to my daughters, then even if no one is there with us, still God is witness between me and you.'" Laban also said to Yaakov, "Here is this pile, and here is this standing stone, which I have set up between me and you. May this pile be a witness, and may the standing stone be a witness, that I will not pass beyond this pile to you, and that you will not pass beyond this pile and this standing stone to me to cause harm. May the God of Abraham and also the God of Nachor, the God of their father, judge between us." But Yaakov swore by the one his father Yitzhak feared. Yaakov offered a sacrifice in the mountains and invited his kinsmen to the meal. They ate the food and spent the whole night on the mountain. Early in the morning, Laban got up, kissed his sons and daughters, and blessed them. Then Laban left and returned to his own place. Yaakov went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Yaakov saw them, he said, "This is God's camp," and called the place Machanaim, 2 camps. Yaakov sent messengers ahead of him to Esau his brother toward the land of Seir, the country of Edom, with these instructions: "Here is what you are to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Yaakov says, I have been living with Laban and have stayed until now. I have cattle, donkeys, and flocks, male and female servants. I am sending to tell the news of my lord, in order to win your favor." The messengers returned to Yaakov, saying, "We went to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you. With him are 400 men." Yaakov became greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people, flocks, cattle, and camels with him into 2 camps, saying, "If Esau comes to the one camp and attacks it, at least the camp that is left will escape." Then Yaakov said, "God of my father Abraham, kinsman, God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Yitzhak, Adonai, who told me, 'Return to your country and to your kinsmen, I will do you good.' I am not worthy of all the love of faithfulness you have shown your servant since I crossed the Jordan with only my staff. But now I have become 2 camps. Please rescue me from my brother Esau. I'm afraid of him, afraid he'll come and attack me, without regard for mothers or children. You said, 'I will certainly do you good and make your descendants as numerous as the grains of sand, by the sea, which are so many that can't be counted.'" He stayed there that night. Then he chose from among his possessions the following as a present for Esau his brother: 200 female goats, 20 male, 200 female sheep, and 20 males, 30 milk camels, and their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 colts. He turned them over to his servants, every drove by itself, and sent to his servants, "Cross over in front of me, and keep a space between each drove and the next one." He instructed the servant in front, "When Esau my brother meets you and asks you, 'Whose servant are you? Where are you going? And whose animals are these?' And you are to say, 'They belong to your servant Yaakov, and they are a present he has sent to my lord Esau, and Yaakov himself is just beyond us.'" He also instructed the second servant and the third, and all that followed in droves. "When you encounter Esau, you are to speak to him in the same way, and you are to add, 'And there, just behind us, is your servant Yaakov.' For he said, 'I will appease him first, and then with the present that goes ahead of me. Then after that, I will see him myself, and maybe he will be friendly toward me.' So the present crossed over ahead of him, and he himself stayed that night in the camp. He got up that night, took his 2 wives, his 2 slave girls, and his 11 children, and forged the Yabok. He took them and sent them across the stream, then sent his possessions across, and Yaakov was left alone. Then some man wrestled with him until daybreak. When he saw that he did not defeat Yaakov, he struck Yaakov's hip socket, so that his hip was dislocated while wrestling with him. The man said, "Let me go, because it's daybreak." But Yaakov replied, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." The man asked, "What is your name?" And he answered, "Yaakov." This man said, "From now on you will no longer be called Yaakov, but Israel, because you have shown your strength to both God and men and have prevailed." Yaakov asked him, "Please, tell me your name." But he answered, "Why are you asking about my name?" and blessed him there. Yaakov called the place Peniel, face of God, because I have seen God face to face, yet my life is spared. As the sun rose upon him, he went past Peniel, limping at the hem. This is why to this day the people of Israel do not eat the thigh muscle that passes among the hip socket, because the man struck Yaakov's hip at its socket. Yaakov raised his eyes and looked out, and there was Esau coming, and 400 men with him. So Yaakov divided the children between Leah, Rachel, and the 2 slave girls, putting the 2 slave girls with their children first, Leah and her children second, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then he himself passed on ahead of them and prostrated himself on the ground 7 times before approaching his brother. Esau ran to meet him, hugged him, threw his arm around his neck, and kissed him. and they wept. Esau looked up, and seeing the women and children, he asked, "Who are these with you?" Yaakov answered, "The children God has graciously given to your servant." Then the slave girls approached with their children. They prostrated themselves. Leah too and her children approached and prostrated themselves, and last came Joseph and Rachel, and they prostrated themselves. Esau asked, "What was the meaning of this procession of droves I encountered?" And he answered, "It was to win my Lord's favor." Esau replied, "I have plenty already, my brother. Keep your possessions for yourselves." Yaakov said, "No, please. If now I have won your favor, then accept my gift. Just seeing your face has been like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me. So please accept the gift I have brought to you, for God has dealt kindly with me, and I have enough." Thus he urged him until he accepted it. Esau said, "Let's break camp and get going. I'll go first." Yaakov said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are small, and the sheep and the cattle suckling their young concern me, because if they overdrive them even one day, all the flocks will die. Instead, please, let me and the pace of my children until I come to my Lord Seir." Esau replied, "Then let me leave with you some of the people I have with me." But Yaakov said, "There's no need for my Lord to be so kind to me." So Esau left that day and returned to Seir. Yaakov went on to Sukkot, where he built himself a house and put up shelters for his cattle. This is why the place is called Sukkot, shelters. Having traveled from Padan Aram, Yaakov arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and set up camp near the city. For the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of silver the parcel of land that he pitched his tent. There he put up an altar, and he called it El Eliho Israel, God, the God of Israel.